Welcome to the Balanced Ambition podcast. I'm your host, Matt Southam. Here, we delve into candid conversations with entrepreneurs, exploring both their business journey and their secrets to maintaining mental well-being. As we navigate the balance of ambition and inner peace, I hope you find insights, inspiration, and invaluable takeaways in every episode. Thank you for joining us. Dan, thank you very much for joining me today. I'd like to start actually by asking you to take us right back. Tell me about your early years, your school years, and then how you progressed into work, and then obviously we'll build through to what it is you're doing now. But take me right back. Tell us about you.
Yeah, sure, Matt. Fantastic to be here. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Pleasure.
What an interesting question. It's so rare to get asked about those early years. So for me, I grew up in Swansea in South Wales and really sort of fell in love with the beaches there, kind of golden sands and dramatic cliffs, really cold water, which tends to keep the tourists away. Went to school to a comprehensive called Ulkfa. Good luck pronouncing that. It's a Welsh word. Really kind of standard childhood, really in Swansea, and played a lot of sport. Played hockey and football, and spent far too much time on the beaches. And then university, went to Exeter, studied history and French. One thing I would say actually about my childhood, I remember really clearly sitting in a geography lesson, at about 12 years old, and hearing about climate change for the first time and realizing without dramatic change, we were going to lose this beautiful part of the world, kind of more the Gower and the beaches there than Swansea itself for all its great points. And just realizing, without dramatic change, we were going to lose that part. But also, within my lifetime. And so that kind of stayed with me ever since that. And I didn't know what to do about that back then. But sort of when we get to the mother tree part of this conversation, that will loop back in, I'm sure. Went to university, studied history and French simply because they were the things that interested me at the time. Spent far too much time at university, drinking, chasing girls, playing football, all the normal things, and just never really thought about being an entrepreneur or any of that, and just was on this kind of path that I think my dad probably set. I think I was just living how, he said, go to uni, have fun and get a 2-1. And that's what I did. And left and had a couple of jobs that really just didn't fit with me. I did recruitment for 3 months and was awful at it, and left. And then I did sales. I was selling, it's basically what Google News is now. And Google News existed back then, like a rival to Google News, and was awful at it. And really at that point in my life was thinking, I'm like 22, 23, thinking I have to make this work. It seems so ludicrous now looking back. But I had that in my head and just wasn't working at all, and got fired from that after 5 months. And it was like this release. I loved it. Suddenly I was like, I'm free of that job. And then spent, for the first time in my life, spent a bit of time thinking, actually, what do I want to do? Like, these 2 jobs didn't work for me. I didn't give it any thought at university. So what do I really want to do? And renewable energy at that time really interested me. This is the kind of early 2010s. I got really lucky. I got onto a graduate course at an energy company called Renewable Energy. They're huge now. Back then they had about 90 employees. And that graduate course meant I could just work in all different parts of their business, and got really kind of a deep understanding of how this energy company works. And their buying part of their energy mix was renewable energy. So there was that kind of social aspect. But just got to work in all sorts of places, and really loved that kind of entrepreneurial and that fast pace that OVO was in this kind of early 2010s, this kind of 2012, 2013 point. And then kind of mid-20s started thinking, okay, this is great, but it's still not quite there in terms of purpose. There was something missing.
Yeah.
And I had this exceptional mentor at the time called Craig Morley, who encouraged me to read a book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah,
and
I know
it completely changed my life. There was this point in there, fantastic.
Yeah.
It completely changed my life. There was a point in the book where it says, think about your funeral and what people are saying, and also what you achieved in your life. And really quickly, it's obvious it's not about the stuff you have or the clothes you wear. It's about how you make people feel and the actions you take.
Yeah.
And it just completely changed for me. And so I set up a social business which was called Good Company. We were connecting volunteers with the elderly. We ran that for about 18 months. It failed. Like, I was so scared of failure in my mid-20s. And it felt like working with the handbrake on, which is an Arsene Wenger saying, I think. I'm sure other people have said it as well, but that's why I picked it up. But yeah, every month wasn't sure if we were going to get paid. We designed this thing in a meeting room and then spent 18 months trying to prove that it was going to work. And clearly it wasn't. But just learned so much of that process. And when sort of it finally, we realized this isn't going to happen. There were tears. Like, I cried on my kitchen floor, and my now wife, then my girlfriend, sort of was like, "It's absolutely fine." And it was, no one had died. We just tested something and it didn't work. And it was like this massive release of energy. And, some amazing lessons. I realized you can't just design something in the meeting room. You have to get out there and design it around the people you genuinely want to help.
Yeah.
And be willing to change what it is to deliver them genuine value, to be of genuine use in their life. So that was just such a fundamental lesson. And also just realizing it's okay to fail. Like, it's okay to try stuff.
It's really liberating in a way to learn that, isn't it? Because we are all incredibly scared of failure, because I think growing up, we're praised for all the good things we do and told off when we get things wrong. But actually, as long as you learn from that failure, actually that can drive you forward.
I think that's exactly it. And liberating is the word. I think you've nailed it. And I think, partly our school system, I won't go too much into depth on this. It's all about getting the grades and getting the A and then, going to university, etc. But actually, real life doesn't always work that way. And
No.
I think we kind of miss a bit of that creativity and that failure for the right reasons. It has to be, we have our morals and our values in the right place. And then any failure within that sphere is actually just good, because we're figuring out different ways that, you only have to get one thing to work out of all those failures for it to become a success. So that it was just such an amazing moment, and ended up writing a few books and got headhunted and tried a few just little businesses, just setting them up on my own, like doing a bit of coding and just started figuring stuff out in much more of a fluid way. And then, got headhunted for something back then, which was called The Big Deal. And they wanted me to launch something called Look After My Bills, which I think they liked my sort of entrepreneurial and energy background. And I became the sort of third shareholder in that business. This is kind of middle of 2017. And Look After My Bills, we were automatically switching people's energy. So whenever your energy price went up, we'd automatically switch you to a better tariff. And, the energy companies, we had this thing called the loyalty tax, which if you didn't switch, the price kept going up. So you ended up paying more for a commodity, which you could get for cheaper, for less, and actually often better customer service as well.
Yeah.
And so I think it was the right time, right product. And we got really lucky. We grew really quickly. We had 10,000 customers in the first 6 months. And then we went on Dragon's Den. We were Y Combinator backed after 6 months as well. And then we went on Dragon's Den and hit it out the park. We had the best ever deal on Dragon's Den in terms of equity to money raised. That it just went crazy. I think we got 50,000 customers overnight when that got shown.
Wow.
We went to 100,000 customers at the end of that year. Like just this kind of crazy rocket ship that it was amazing to experience. It was completely nuts to actually try and keep the thing together. But we did it. We had a great team, and then Go Compare bought us. So a good return for the Dragons who invested, Jenny Campbell and Tej Lavani, and for good return for other investors. So that was the kind of Look After My Bills journey. And actually, while working there, it became quite a comfortable job. We'd established it. It was doing kind of 20 million plus revenue a year by that point. So it was a really established. And my wife became pregnant. We've now got a 2.5-year-old boy, Theo. It just really made me question where we're spending my time, and what was life going to be like for Theo when he's my age, when he's in his mid-30s. What's the world going to look like? It's going to be so different. It's going to be so different. And I want him to grow up in a world where he has similar opportunities that I've had, and the amazing wildlife that we share this world with is still available to him when he's in his 30s. I just felt so compelled on this, and a quick look after my bills, and just started interviewing people, just started listening to people of all walks of life, in terms of how the climate crisis impacts their life.
Yeah.
And my wife actually came up with the idea of something called the Climate Challenge, which this is well over 2 years ago now, which was basically groups of about 8 people, enough to share pizza, hopefully a vegan pizza, but enough to share pizza over a month all together, going through about 30 actions to live more sustainably. So for me, it was like running 3 focus groups, and for us all going through it, we were discovering ways to live more sustainably. We did all sorts of things. We got rid of single-use plastic, which was much harder than it should be. We went vegan for the day, which was easier than I thought it would be. We looked at our carbon footprints. And 2 actions that we did really stood out for me, as well as lots of other people who went through these challenges. We did 5 challenges, groups of 8 people each time back then. And those two actions were where our banks were investing and where our pensions were invested. For me as well. So 1% of my pension was in tobacco, 2% was in oil and gas, BP and Shell, 1% was in weapons, about 0.5% in gambling, just things that I would never choose. And yet every single month, some of my hard-earned cash had been going there. It was like, this is ridiculous. And then we looked at the banks, and we banked at Look After My Bills with Lloyds. Lloyds, they've put 14 billion into oil and gas since 2016. So since the Paris Agreement. Wow. So it's over 2 billion a year going in. And so, it's all very well getting people to green energy tariffs and bringing renewable energy into the mix through consumer choice. But if Lloyds, and actually there are worse actors than Lloyds, continue to put those billions a year into that industry, then we're not going to move the needle. So that's really the spark that Mother Tree started with, and launched Mother Tree in March 2021, I want to say. 2022. Got to get my dates on now. 2022. Yeah. And we were originally sort of B2C. It was a what we call our money carbon calculator. I'm pretty sure it's definitely the first in the UK. I'm pretty sure it's the first in the world, but it will show you the carbon impact of your money. So if you have £10,000 with Lloyds or with Barclays, it'll show you actually how much that means in terms of carbon as a result of holding that money in a current account. And that was okay. It was a real struggle for the first year. It felt a bit like pushing the rock up the hill, and we were talking to customers and iterating. And earlier last year, we pivoted to B2B, and that's where it's really taken off. So we now work with businesses to make sure their money, so their pension, banks and bills, is as low carbon as can be, but also they're getting the most possible savings out of those switches. And then we do the switches on their behalf. So we use the sort of knowledge we built to Look After My Bills to make sure those switches go really smoothly. So that's a bit of my history. Sorry, I feel like I've talked far too much for that question. But,
there's a couple of bits that really stand out to me, actually. I guess back to your early years, one, that geography lesson, learning about something, learning about the climate change. And that obviously stuck with you, even though, like many people, we all sort of follow the standard path. So you go to uni and you get because that's what you're meant to do. And we all follow that. And actually, you mentioned that the school system, and I don't blame teachers here at all. I've got a couple of sisters who are teachers, but they're judged on teaching children to therefore pass an exam, and that's what they do. But it needs to go further back. The whole school system isn't set up necessarily for thinking outside the box. The entrepreneurial spirit, coming up with something new. It's about learning something and then proving that you know it. And you touched on that. And I think that's sometimes where entrepreneurs actually it niggles away at us, doesn't it? We're working in other jobs, but actually there's that little niggle of, is this actually what I want to be doing? And talking about, what someone would say at your funeral is actually a really good way of thinking about it. But those early years obviously did have an impact on where you are today. Is that fair to say?
I think so. I haven't done a huge amount of introspection on this. What I do just want to say, one of my sisters is a teacher. She's one of
Yeah.
my favorite people. So this is not a knock against teachers. I think they
No,
work
two,
in
two
a
of my sisters are teachers, so yeah.
yeah, they work in a very hard system, and I think they do incredible work with kids. So it's not the teachers themselves. Uh, so yeah, I think I haven't done a huge amount of introspection in terms of my early life. I think it was, like every kid, probably, but certainly those in Swansea, we played a lot of sport.
Yeah.
We didn't really want to go to school. But the weird thing is, I always liked learning. I loved the pressure of exams. I actually enjoyed it. And this really bizarre, probably like the one person in the UK. I'm sure there are others, but I haven't heard many where even at university, I loved the focus. I loved that, like, here's a deadline, here's something you have to deliver against, and yeah, I enjoyed that. But it doesn't promote that kind of out of the box thinking, or that, how can we be creative around a problem that we've noticed. And that's okay. Like, I think there are different paths for different people. But yeah, I think from my side, I got really good at cramming knowledge at school. If you're asking me, like, what my sort of youth gave me, I got good at being disciplined. Like, I played hockey at quite a high level, and to do, you have to be disciplined to do that. I think that's a
Yeah.
really good thing to have. I had a really great family, and I've got an amazing family to keep me grounded, and it's very, very lucky to have that. So I definitely won the birth lottery. Right, I'm incredibly thankful for those things, and yeah, it's definitely helped get me to where I am.
Yeah, but you certainly now feel like what you're doing has more purpose. You're a purpose-driven business or organization. And talk to me a little bit about why you think it's really blossomed since you've launched out to that B2B. Do you think businesses maybe one of my insights would be that businesses are a little bit more conscious that actually the message they're putting out needs to match with the public opinion of, actually, if you're saying you're a good business, try and prove it, please, to us. And by using something like Mother Tree, that's one way that they can do that.
Oh, 100%. This is a proof point to show employees and potential customers, we are one of the good guys. We are
Yeah.
on the good, we're doing good for both the planet and for our employees. And employees love that. So part of the thing that we do for businesses is we show them the video of the impact that these changes are having, by going to a bank or a pension that's genuinely investing in these businesses' mission. Suddenly it lifts the whole company, and we see that we do reports with employees, questionnaires, where they actually it adds to their positive experience of the company. And I'll give you one example. We work with this brilliant Facebook marketing agency called QuickFox Labs. Two female founders, Emma and Amy. Emma and Amy have never had a female boss in their careers before launching QuickFox Labs, which is just ludicrous.
Yeah.
And they recruit out of prisons and out of foster care. So their whole sort of ethos at this company is diversity and equality and social mobility. And then we looked at their bank, and their bank is investing billions into all white male boards, all white male C-suites, and just really undermining their ethos. And so we switched their bank, we saved them money, we saved them carbon, we saved them time from looking around all the accounts and is it going to be right for our systems and stuff. We did all of it for them. But the thing that they got real value out of is that the bank that they're now with proportionally puts more into diverse boards, diverse leadership teams, and into social mobility, into making sure we have a society where, wherever you come from, you have a chance to end up doing what you really want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I mean, you touched on it just now, saying you were lucky with the way you were born and brought up and family and things like that. And actually, I think sometimes, while that's not, we couldn't help that, but actually, yeah, I was born into a family, my parents together, I was brought up nicely. But actually, not everyone is that lucky. But that isn't their fault. But actually, but they're already starting the race a little bit behind. And actually, yeah, anything we can do to actually empower people to make the most of their life. And I think that's a really important part as well. Possibly, yeah, understanding what do you want to do, and then enabling people to be able to do that, whatever the starting block was that they initially had.
Yeah, I think that's a really important part of this journey of life, and it's realizing, really did win the birth lottery. I mean, I think the stat is, and I would need to check this, if you're earning more than, I think it's £25,000 a year, you're in something like the top 5% globally.
Yeah,
I think it's something like that.
Which seems crazy, doesn't it? It sounds crazy.
Yeah, I mean, the average wage in the UK is, I think, north of 30k now. So we're in an incredibly privileged position, and for me, it's what I'm really interested in. One of the things is how can we change the systems so that it's fairer for as many people as possible. And one of those ways is actually through the finance, banks and pensions at the forefront of that.
Yeah, I think I want to ask you one question that I've asked a couple of people on this podcast, and everyone's given a slightly different answer. The end game will be the same, but obviously you've got and I'm not going to put any words into your mouth, but you've obviously got quite an environmental background. You're interested in climate change and try and reduce our impact and that. If I was to say, well, why should we care? What would your be on? Yeah, you start talking about climate change, and someone says, "Oh, I'm not bothered. Why should I care about that?" What would be your answer to that?
Well, I think climate change and the biodiversity crisis, they go hand in hand. They are the two biggest challenges humanity's ever faced. And there's a couple of other challenges that we're facing. So we've got the threat of nuclear war, which has come back. We've got AI. But of those three, there's only one that each and every one of us can do something about, and that's our impact on the planet. So that's just for me the sort of base level. The second is thinking about what kind of planet do we want to retire into. So we're all on this rock together. In 30 years, I'll never retire in the traditional sense, but in 30 years when retirement's available, what kind of planet is it going to be? We have a choice on that. It could be, we can't go outside because of toxic air, and our summers are 40 degrees plus in the UK, and our rivers are polluted worse than they are today, which is hard to think that's possible, but it is possible. And that is kind of the default future. That is kind of the future that we're on, unless we have dramatic change here. It doesn't have to be the future. We can genuinely change that. And so, for me, it's that environmental point, but for somebody else, and I work hard to understand what are they passionate about, but it could be that they love fishing or golf. Well, those things are going to be impacted unless they're willing to change now. The other really cool thing is actually these changes aren't as hard as perhaps they're sold to us, and often there's other advantages. Often by switching bank, you actually save more money, right? So we switched one business's bank, we saved them £30,000 last year, and we did all the work for them. You can save significant amounts of money by doing the right actions. And we're often told there's this green premium. That's true. That's true on some products. You pay more for an electric bike than that's not a great example. You pay more for an electric car perhaps than a petrol car these days. But for banks and for pensions as well, in terms of returns, if you get it right, we're not seeing that. We're seeing actually you benefit more. So there's a financial return. There's a kind of what kind of future do I want to be in place? And then also, if you do care, even a modicum, even like just a kind of one pixel of caring, and you think, okay, well, given I have some influence in this game, and I realize, my carbon footprint is part of that. Well, as a UK consumer, the average UK individual has about 10 tons carbon footprint per year for all of their actions, except for banking and pensions. And when you add in banking and pensions, it adds another 10 tons. Right. So if you care even a tiny bit, just getting the finances right could save you money, could reduce carbon, and could change the future.
Yeah. And quite by a massive amount as well. I think that's Possibly, and I've had this conversation with a few people, is that maybe as individuals, we often feel like, look, my impact isn't going to make much of an impact. But I guess it goes back to the whole marginal gains and the 1% theory and all of this. That actually, if yes, just me doing something won't make a difference. But if me and my neighbor and the neighbor the other side and you and your friends and my partner and their friend, suddenly, actually, it does become quite a big group and we can have an impact.
Exactly. I love that. I love that because it can feel quite isolating. But why should I do it when my next door neighbor isn't making these changes? But you only need 2% of a society to change that society. That's the tipping point. Malcolm Gladwell in his books talk about it. It's the tipping point of the number of citizens who need to make a change for it to become a new part of that society. So it doesn't take that much. And
No.
we're far more connected on these things than we think. And we've seen there's a street in London last year. This couple, they're artists. They put solar panels on their house. They thought this was such a good idea. They turned the whole street into a solar panel factory. Everybody on that street who wanted solar panels, they got it sorted out. That street doesn't pay anything for their energy anymore, right? They went through the energy crisis. And it's like they're winning here. And then there's a ripple outside one house, and now that whole street, and as we get more streets doing that, suddenly that energy revolution takes off. So it doesn't take much, and I think actually by doing these actions, and I've certainly seen this, and I'm inspired by people who do it. You inspire other people. Yeah. So you might feel like one person, but actually, it, as you've said already, it very quickly grows.
Yeah, it is those sort of marginal gains and the compound interest effect and all of that of just everyone doing a little bit better. I want to move on to, I suppose, you and your business. I often find entrepreneurs who are running a business that they're really passionate about, it almost becomes all consuming because it's hard to switch off between your passion and your likes and what you're interested in and your work life. So how do you balance that? How do you make sure you do switch off?
It's such a challenge. It's such a challenge. And I love balanced ambition. I think that's such a good name, good aim as well. And yeah, it is a real challenge. My wife and I work hard at it. She's also an entrepreneur. So, we're kind of lucky in one sense because we can set our own hours. So we can, we're very, we're both very, very clear on the hours we're going to dedicate. And I'll get to that. But also, both of us being entrepreneurs, some stuff comes up where we just have to deal with it. And it feels like at the cost of the relationship at times. So it takes real work. How do I manage it? First, I'm intentional. So every month I have goals. There's always a family goal.
Okay.
Or several of them. But I check in with those goals and I make sure, for me, it is about, there's no point doing what I'm doing if I haven't got an amazing family. It's Jules, my wife, and my son Theo, if I don't get to spend quality time with them now. Like, I don't want to look back in 10 years and think, I built a good business. If I'm lucky enough to do that, if the condition, if we make that work, I look back and think, but it was at the cost of my family. Like, that's not a cost I'm willing to pay. So, I make sure that is really front and center. What that means is, so at 4:30 every day, my wife and I, we down tools. The laptops get closed. If possible, the phones go off. It's not always possible, but that's we aim for it. And there's the three of us. We have time together. At about 7, one of us will read Theo a book and put him to sleep, and we'll both be back online on emails and stuff for a bit more in the evening. And then we try, as much as we can, we try and have sort of Friday evening and Saturdays off. But yeah, it takes balance. And the thing that my wife and I really connect on is long walks. And a combination of our companies plus having a 2-year-old has meant that's been particularly hard. We just have to be really strict. Like, we are going on a 2-hour walk at least once a month just to have, be able to talk a lot of that stuff out. So that all helps. But it's a constant balance, right? It's a constant balancing act. Great question. Love the name of the podcast, because I think that is what it's all about, isn't it? It's about having doing something of purpose, but also without sacrificing, the family and the amazing other things that go on in life.
Yeah, because I think so many entrepreneurs are passionate about their business, whatever sector they're in, and it's very easy that becomes all consuming. And it's quite often with, I certainly know with families, your partner and things like that, you almost, you get to the stage where everything's about the business, and you not take them for granted, but you become complacent that actually they're always there. But actually, it's the same. If you don't invest in your relationship, it's going to be the same as your business. If you don't invest in your business and the time, things start to slip, things start to fail. And actually, you need to take stock at that much earlier.
That's it. Yeah.
Look, thank you so much for talking to me today. I've actually really enjoyed our conversation. I've enjoyed learning about what it is the business does, and how actually, as businesses, we can make an impact on behalf of the business, but also on behalf of our teams and the staff that we employ, whether that's via pensions or I guess even on a business side, actually ensuring that our team are more engaged with what we're doing, and understanding that actually we're not just saying we're a good company, we're doing good, and we're, I suppose, not position ourselves correctly, but actually act on that as well, and make the right choices. So yeah, thank you. I want to finish actually just one final question. Someone starting a business, so they might be where you were, mid-20s or early 20s, working a job they're not too sure about, but they're thinking of maybe doing something, but they haven't quite figured it out. What would you say to someone looking to start a business?
Great question. I think the best thing, and this is entirely based on my own experience, so feel free to chuck this out as advice, but the best thing that I did was work with incredible entrepreneurs. So I was lucky enough to work for Stephen Fitzpatrick at Renewable Energy. I was lucky enough to launch Good Company alongside Craig Morley, and then lucky enough to launch Look After My Bills with Henry DeZoot and Will Hodson. And there's this sort of story that's sold to us that you can just launch a business in your 20s and it'll be amazing. And the reality is it's very different to that. It's grit, and there are a lot of boring jobs that you just have to get done to make the business work. And I honestly think that the best thing I did was become the sort of second hand, the right hand of these amazing, particularly Craig, Will, and Henry, of these amazing entrepreneurs, and just learn from them and absorb from them and understand, what are they doing that creates successful companies. And it was just like the best apprenticeship I could have had. So yeah, I would say if you did one thing, go and find an entrepreneur that you really think is onto something, and try and get in early. Try and get in so that you're that sort of second, third person hire, so you can really learn from them.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. I think we should all act like sponges. So many people get caught up in the hustle culture of we're business owners, we know it all. No, actually, you can always learn something. And I think learning as much as you can, learn from their mistakes. You mentioned making failures or making mistakes. We've all been there. The more you can learn from other people, the better the odds are that actually your business is going to succeed. So I think that's great advice.
Yeah. Thanks,
Dan.
man.
Thank you very much for joining me today, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Balanced Ambition podcast. I genuinely hope the stories inspire you as much as they inspire me. If you found value in today's conversation, please share it with a friend. And remember, by subscribing, you won't miss an episode, and it would truly mean the world to me. Stay balanced, and I'll see you next time.